Isn't pedigree a type of dog food? All right, this is Norris Teaches Science, Biology Edition. We're continuing our genetics video section. And I'm Mr. Norris, and today I present to you pedigrees. I'm not talking the dog food. All right, so by the end of the video, you should be able to say, I can read different types of pedigree charts and diagrams. So let's start off with pedigree charts. What are they? What are they saying? They help trace phenotypes and genotypes in a family to determine whether people are carriers carrying recessive alleles. It's like a family tree, but for a trait. And you trace the trait through everything. You know the genotypes from it, so you'll know the phenotypes from it. Um, when we read pedigrees, we have to look at different charts. One thing that you need to know is that squares are males and circles are females. I kind of think of it like this: males have squared shoulders while females have round shoulders. That's how I can remember it. And on top, on there, you're going to have shaded in symbols, non-shaded in symbols, and sometimes on special pedigrees, you'll have half shaded ones. So, talking about males, if the male is box is not shaded in, that means they're unaffected. And if they are shaded in, they're affected. Means that they have whatever you're talking about, via rolling your tongue or hemophilia. Males who are half-half are carriers, and this only works when it's not a sex-linked pedigree. Females are the same way. Female circles not shaded in are unaffected. Female shaded in circles are affected, and female half shaded in are carriers. These carrier ones sometimes don't appear on all pedigrees. If they do, it makes your life so much easier during the process. But sometimes, and you'll see on these, it won't do it. You'll just have to deal with it. If a square and a circle are connected in the middle, they're married. Lines coming off that marriage line to other symbols are their children. Now, there's three types of pedigree charts you could see. The first ones are autosomal pedigrees, means these are any trait that would not appear on your sex chromosomes. So when you do these, you don't have to write your X and Y's up here. You just write the normal genotypes. For autosomal dominant dominant pedigrees, every affected individual has one affected parent, at least, and two affected individuals may have unaffected offspring. You can kind of remember those heterozygous people, sometimes they have those kids that are just different from everyone else. Like me, I'm nothing like my family. I'm a lot of the recessiveness in my family. The one thing about autosomal dominant pedigrees, the trait won't skip a generation. In every generation, someone will be affected. Autosomal recessive pedigrees, they affected individuals may have unaffected parents. All children of two affected parents will be affected. The thing about this, sometimes this can skip generations and sometimes it can't. The last type of pedigree chart would be a sex-linked, X-linked pedigrees. These, when you write these genotypes, you have to write the XX and the XY. If a female has it, all of her sons will have it. In order for a female to get it, her father must have it. Those are just some key things to look at. I'm not in here. We're just going to read them, but in some, when you get in higher level biology classes, you're going to be able to have to look at a pedigree and determine if it's autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, or sex linked. So let's do a little practice here. Autosomal dominant trait pedigree practice. So this is a autosomal dominant. So if this pedigree exhibits Huntington's disease, an autosomal dominant trait. So we have affected and unaffected. So our three genotypes are capital H, capital H, capital H, lowercase h, and lowercase h, lowercase h. Since Huntington's disease is dominant, so any of the capital ones will be shaded. And if it's unshaded, it's going to be 2 lowercase letters. So this helps us out really quick. So if you notice, you have generation markers here. Each individual is marked with a number. So the easiest way to do is the one that's unshaded. Unshaded ones are lowercase h, lowercase h. So we're going to label all of them lowercase h, lowercase h. It's important that you label them because this will come back and help you when we do all the other people. All right. So we have figured out all the unaffected people are little h, little h. Now we need to figure out all the affected people, all the people that have Huntington's disease genotype. And so to do that, that means all the ones that are shaded have a capital H in there somewhere. Now, some people like start at generation 1, some people like start at generation 3. I start at generation 2. I like in the middle. So I'm going to start at generation 2, individual 1. I know he has a capital H. I need to figure out what the other letter could be. So to do this, I'm going to have to look at his parents, and I'm going to have to look at his children. So the easiest way is to look at the children or the parents. Either way works. For me, I'm going to look at his children. He has a wife who is unaffected and has 2 lowercase h's. He has a child that's affected and a child that's not affected. For this child to be unaffected, it has to get a lowercase h from the mother and a lowercase h from the father. That means the father has to be big H, little h. Next one, I'm going to go over here to generation 2, 8. All right, I know he has a big H, but now I'm going to look at his children. If he has unaffected children, he's capital H, lowercase h. But if all of his children are affected, then he's big H, big H. And if you look, all of his children aren't affected. He has some unaffected children, so he's going to be lowercase h. Now, the last person in generation 2 we need to talk about is generation 2, individual number 5. He has a capital H. But if you look, he has no kids. So we can't look at the kids. So we're going to have to look at the parents. The way he can be big H is if both his parents are affected. But if you look, he has one unaffected parent and one affected parent. So that means he's big H, little h. After generation 2, I like to go generation 3. I like to do the first generation last. I'm just always weird. You should have known this if you've watched a lot of my videos. All right, so generation 2, individual 1, we know he's affected, so we had to get that from his father. But his mother is unaffected, so the mother has to give him a lowercase h, so he's big H, little h. All these individuals are done. Let's go to generation 3, individual 2. We know it's a big H, and then we have to look at the parents. Only way this could be big H is if both parents are affected, but both parents aren't affected. So it's big H, little h. Same thing goes for generation 3, number 8. Same process works because of the parents. All right, let's figure out grandpa up here. Generation 1, individual 1. We know it's a big H. Now we need to figure, is grandpa big H, or is he big H, little h? Only way that grandpa here can be big H is that all of his children are affected. His children are the people in generation 2 that are individual 1, 3, 5, 6, and 8. If we look, first child was affected. Second child was not affected. And that means he has to be big H, little h, so he can give a little h, and the mother can give a little h, so this child is unaffected. So that if you look, everyone's genotype is up here. So now you could ask questions about who's a carrier, who's affected, who's not affected. all those information. And this is autosomal dominant. The other one I'm going to go over is autosomal recessive. And so this says in this pedigree, it represents the inheritance of Tay-Sachs disease, which is recessive. So we're going to use the letter A here. So we have our genotypes, big A, big A, big A, and little a, little a. Since this is a autosomal recessive pedigree and Tay-Sachs is recessive, that means those individuals that are affected are having the recessive trait, which is two lowercase a's. So these are lowercase a are shaded. That means all the non-shaded ones are either big A, or big A, little a. So it still makes it easier. We know that the shaded ones are little a. So we're going to label those real quick. Not many to label with that. Now we need to figure out what is the genotype of all the other people in this pedigree. So like I usually do, I go with generation 2 and I start with individual 1. Since it's unaffected, we know that it has at least one capital letter A. Then we need to look at its children and its parents. For it to be big A, we most likely need to see if every one of its children are unaffected. But if you look, it has children that are affected. That means this has to be able to give a lowercase a. Same thing happens for generation 2, number 2. We know it's a big A, but for it to be big A, all the children have to be unaffected, but they have affected children, so it's a big A, little a. All right, the last one in generation 2, number 4, we need to figure out. We know has a big A, but we need to look at its children. The child is affected. It gets one of the little A's from the dad, so the mom has to give a little A as well. Generation 3, individual 2, big A, but here's the issue. If we look at the parents, one parent could give a big A, the other parent could be giving a big A or a little a. So we would have to write big A, or big A, little a. Same thing for individual 4 in generation 3. It could be either of them. We won't really know what they are until they have children of their own. Now, last person, grandpa up here, we need to figure out, we know he's a big A. We need to look at children. We all need to see if he has an affected child. He does have an affected child. So one of the small a's comes from the mother, so the other small a has to come from grandpa here. So he's big A, little a. And that's a little bit about pedigrees, about reading the pedigree charts and figure out the genotypes. If you want to know more about pedigrees, I did not cover how to do sex-linked pedigrees, but it's mainly the same process. I suggest you go over to YouTube or go over to Google and learn a little bit more about these types of pedigrees and what they're used for in today's society. But I hope you learned a little bit today or learned something. And I'm Mr. Norris, and I am out of here for this video.